I'm standing in Hatenovillage with the hopes of buying a mushroom hat, but something has caught my attention. If you walk up the path a little further, you'll find this. 2 windmills operating in tandem. Now at first glance, these windmills don't appear to have any special function. There are no quests associated with them, there are no special items inside, only a handful of the villagers even talk about them. But these windmills serve a specific purpose that impacts every Hyrulean citizen on a daily basis. Let's get into it. So what do windmills generally do? Well, there's 4 main things. Generating electricity, processing wood in a wood mill, pumping water for irrigation, and grinding grain. Let's talk about those in order. There is no electricity in Hyrule. All of the light is from fire or organic means. Man, these mushroom lamps are cool. Wood processing mills tend to be pretty large, and despite the fact that nearly every home in Hyrule has some form of wood construction in it, it's unlikely that this is the case given the size. There are lots of uses for a windmill that's used for water pumping or irrigation. On Earth, the country of the Netherlands uses this kind of windmill to continuously pump to keep their country out of the ocean, as a lot of it is below sea level. Now, there are no immediate large bodies of water in Hatenovillage that would risk flood, so it's probably not for this. However, Hatenovillage is the primary crop producer for Hyrule, and we know there are wells with groundwater sources, so a windmill for water irrigation would actually make sense here. Also, these right here, these are rice fields. Rice fields require a lot of water to grow a sustainable crop. So this kind of windmill seems feasible. The final common type of windmill is the grain windmill or grist windmill. This windmill uses the torque created by the wind to grind grain to make flour, to make bread, mochi, etc. The size also makes sense here. Windmills have been around for a long time. And as you can imagine, for something that had over 1,000 years of iteration before industrialization, there's a lot of information and history out there. So we're going to be relatively brief, but please, if you know something and you want to elaborate, put it in the comments. I'd love to learn. The first wind-powered device was used in the Babylonian Empire around 1700 BC. The Romans also had some wind-powered devices, but the first design to resemble a modern windmill was the panemone windmill in Persia around 700 AD. Initially, these were used for irrigating crops, but then later were transitioned to grinding grain for flour. As the panemone windmill made its way into Europe, the design was iterated upon to create the first vertical windmill, which the ones in Hatenovillage resemble nicely. Okay, somehow we've talked a lot about windmills and we still haven't even stepped inside, so come on. Let's open the door and check it out. Right away when you enter, it's pretty clear. This windmill is used for grinding grain. We see bags on the shelves and the ground that are probably ground grain, and we'll get into what those are specifically in a minute. But now that we've established that this is in fact a grist windmill, how well does it work? I'm going to attempt to answer this, but if this video reaches 100,000 views, I will make a scaled down, functional version of this windmill that does grind grain, make bread with that flour, and do a follow-up video. Extremely early European windmills looked just like this one. That is to say that they share one common fatal flaw. What do you do if the wind is blowing literally any other direction? In the case of Hatenovillage, you're eating ice soup. In the real world, the first solution to this problem was the post windmill, where you could turn the windmill to catch the wind regardless of the wind's direction. These got so fancy all the way up to where some tower windmills would actually automatically turn to catch the wind. Now, at least Hatenovillage's windmills do have a little thought put into this matter. They are placed in a way that they catch the wind from the ocean, which is where most of the wind appears to come from in Hatenovillage. This is a pretty simple grist windmill, with a single runner stone on top of a bedstone. The force of the wind gets transmitted into the cogs on the top floor, which in turn rotate the runner stone on the bedstone, grinding grain between the stones into flour. If you clip into the top floor, you can see that Nintendo didn't model the cogs that would turn the milling stone, but the shaft does rotate at the same rate as the windmill. It is physics-based, which is pretty neat. Now, looking at the runner stone, there's only one small spot to put the grain, but where does the flour come out? In the real world, most of the time, the millstones would be on the second floor to allow for flour to come down a chute into a bag for quick and easy processing. The ones without this setup would at least have a little downspout for the flour to come out below the milling stones, but we don't see anything like that here. It's possible that there's another room below this layer, but when you clip out of bounds, there's no room modeled, and it doesn't really look like it based on the construction. Also, listen to this. Now a real grist windmill. Back to Hateno's windmill. The sound design in this game is just off the charts. Stepping back outside the windmill, there is one more really cool detail for this windmill in particular. The sails are accessible from the ground. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but if you're running a mill with a small crew, you don't want to send one of your only millers up a ladder in really heavy winds. You want to be able to adjust the sails from the ground. Despite this being a feature, we see the windmills running 24/7. You're going to be re-chiseling and replacing a lot of millstones, as well as checking things really frequently to ensure quality. We even see Rolera and Rhodes sitting up on this hill monitoring both windmills, but they literally never step inside, and they don't really do anything other than confirming that these are used to grind some kind of flour. Also, why on earth did they choose windmills? They could have made water mills. They have multiple flowing rivers in town, which would have been way more consistent than a fixed point based on wind. But, moving on. So these mills are theoretically functioning despite some flaws. So what are they milling? Well, there's two obvious options. The first is Hylian rice. Rice flour has a ton of uses in real life, and a lot of the fields in Hatenovillage are implied to be rice fields. You can cut the grass here and get rice. Rice is sold at the store. However, I don't think this is the case. In Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there are 39 recipes that include Hylian rice. Take a look. They all have one thing in common. Can you tell me what it is? None of them, and I mean none of them, use rice flour. So something else must be going on here. Before I tell you what it is though, I want to give an honorable mention to one that isn't super obvious. When you enter this windmill for the first time in Tears of the Kingdom, there are some squirrels in here snacking on Chickaloo tree nuts. In The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, both the Guardians and the Shrines take heavy inspiration from Jomon pottery. The Jomon people were manually grinding grain 10,000 years ago. Researchers of the Jomon people believe that they ate dumplings and cookies made out of acorn flour. There's even examples of preserved acorn flour in Jomon pottery in museums in Japan. Since the games draw a little bit from Jomon ancestry, I wanted to include this section, even though it's not entirely related. So, since we don't think it's rice that they're milling, what is it? Well, there's really only one more obvious answer, and that's tabantha wheat. Every recipe in the game that uses tabantha wheat uses milled wheat flour. Breads, cakes, stews, fried seafood. It's even in the description when you pick it up. This grain is cultivated extensively on the Tabantha Plains. It's ground finely with a millstone and can be used to make things such as stews and breads. Now, if you're really familiar with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you may have noticed the problem here. For the residents of Hyrule, the only place to harvest Tabantha wheat is, well, the Tabantha region. It takes about 18 in-game hours to make it from Tabantha to Hatenovillage in ideal conditions. Not to mention that in Tears of the Kingdom, this bridge is out and Fort Hateno is crawling with monsters. Now, this seems a little bit crazy just to make some bread. But consider for a second, what would you do if you wanted bread? I know everyone's situation is not the same, but for most of you, it's probably a quick trip to the grocery store, buy the bread you want, buy some flour if you want to make the bread yourself, and that's it. You're done. Do you ever wonder how the bread got there? How'd the flour get there? It's likely that the journey and process to get bread to every one of you is a lot more time consuming and complicated than putting some wheat in a cart and going on a couple day horse ride to mill it to flour. Also, even Link can grow wheat in Hatenovillage, so it's possible they're cultivating it locally in addition to bringing some from the Tabantha region. So even though it's likely that the source of the wheat is so far away, these windmills appear to be for grinding Tabantha wheat flour. And that's pretty cool. It stands to reason then that these bags are bags of flour. Many of the Hylian homes in the game have ovens. There are bags of flour in every house in Hatenovillage. These bags are at every stable. It's in Kakariko. Lurelin and Rito Village sell Tabantha wheat. But I wasn't satisfied yet. I really wanted to find out if there was evidence of other mills in the game. So I scoured ruins of old settlements for hours, but I couldn't find any evidence of structures to grind grain. There are a few stone and mortar pedestals in multiple towns, so maybe these get used to grind wheat occasionally as well. I was really hoping that the Tabantha Village ruins or the Merida Exchange ruins would have had signs of a mill given their proximity to the source of Tabantha wheat, but you can't really tell anything from the state they're in. So, based on what I found, these windmills are the only signs of a grist mill in Hyrule, which leads me to believe the process of bringing wheat to Hatenovillage and dispersing the flour throughout Hyrule isn't new. Tabantha wheat and the food that comes with it is an integral part of the cuisine and agriculture of this version of Hyrule. Now, all of this is really fun to think about, but we have to remember this is not a real village. These are not real people. These squirrels, they're not real. Nintendo could have just as easily thrown the windmill on the hillside for aesthetics only, and it wouldn't have changed 99.9% of players' experience with the game. I would imagine a lot of people didn't even enter these windmills on their playthroughs. However, this thoughtfulness makes the world feel lived in. Hatenovillage's day-to-day life is so different from yours and mine, and yet it feels relatable. For them, getting their bag of wheat flour and making bread probably doesn't feel all that different from you or I going to the grocery store and buying bread. The next time you're eating bread, take a minute and think about where it came from. Someone planted that wheat. Someone grew it and harvested it. Someone brought it to a mill. Someone milled it to flour. Someone made that bread. And now you're eating it. And that's something special. This was Vicarious. Thank you for watching. I just want to take a quick second and say thank you so much for all the support. Part of the inspiration for this video in particular was I just got a home mill, and so I've been milling my own flour, and so discovering that this windmill was in fact a grist windmill got me really excited. Making the flour yourself from berries is really fun. It tastes really good. So if you enjoyed the video or you didn't, just let me know in the comments. I loved hearing everybody's thoughts and opinions on the ocean video, so let me know if there's anything else I could do better in this one. You can support me on Patreon if you want, but seriously, it means a lot to have had the viewership I've had in the last couple weeks. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. This windmill uses the torque created by the wind to grain so much in my eye.